Of course. Welcome, everybody. This is House General and Housing. It is still for a little while longer, Friday, February 28th, the last day of February.
Oh,
And what we're doing now is we're hearing from Ellen Tchaikovsky. Pronounce it right.
Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky, I was going to do it right. Okay. Ellen Tchaikovsky, who is going from Ledge Council, who's going to walk us through part of the language. And then we're going to hear at 2:00 from Cameron Wood, Ledge Council, who is going to walk through the rest. And then we're going to take a straw vote on the bill, the committee bill. I want to clarify that it isn't this language, all the language you're going to see, it has to be finally edited, and it hasn't been. And the edit will not make substantive changes. However, it is inevitable that there are going to be some stray pieces that are going to require something, a little more of this, a little more of that, or something that we've added in that we have to check on something. I'm here next week. Some Ledge Council are going to be here next week, and we're going to work our way through this just to make sure that what everybody sees when we come back is the final thing, the actual final thing. So when you do a straw poll on this, when we do a straw poll, we're doing a straw poll with the understanding, as I said earlier, is that it ain't over till it's over, and that, people could vote differently if something comes up. Or, if there's a problem, we could change the language, we can yank something out, stuff like that. It's inevitable that that's going to happen until the last moment, until we vote. But hopefully when you come back, the bill will be there in its final form. Ellen, you want to say your name for the record and take it away?
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. So the draft that I have for you today is draft 5.1 dated 2/28/2025 at 12:16 p.m.
Is this also by now?
It should be posted.
It's posted under you for the date today, Friday, February 28th. Let me just make sure.
It's 31 pages.
2/28. Yep. Okay.
And Cameron will be bringing you different language after this. So we're trying to keep as organized as possible. But my language is ready before his was. So we're on 5.1 with me right now from the 12:16 p.m. draft. So my language starts on page 19.
I'll scroll.
And so as was discussed at our last meeting, I handle land use and energy. So there are land use appeals language pieces in your bill, starting with section 9. Section 9 is about standard of review and appeal. And so there's a tweak to the language that was previously discussed. I'm also happy to answer questions about what is currently done. What's currently done at the Environmental Division of the Superior Court is that when a land use decision is before the court, it is de novo. That means they put the case on anew. Both parties put on their evidence. This is changing that slightly. So on page 19, the language that's added says that the Environmental Division will apply the standards of de novo, except in the case of, and so down on line 14, a decision from an appropriate municipal panel on a housing development, in which case, to prevail, a party appealing the decision shall demonstrate the application for the housing development is consistent or inconsistent with the municipal bylaw or land use regulation that directly affects the property. So you were discussing how to frame this so that it could be for both an opponent to the project and the project developer themselves. And so that's why you did have inconsistent with originally. But I suspect if a developer had been denied a permit, they wouldn't want to be proving that it was inconsistent with.
You want to prove it consistent.
Consistent with. And so that's what I came up with, but I do want to make sure it captures your intent.
This is basically the identical language that we had before with two. One, it's just written so that it would apply to an appeal by a citizen who's unhappy with the project. They'd have to show it was inconsistent. And or a developer who was challenging a denial of the project, they'd have to show it was consistent. And yeah. So it's all, it just, and recognizes that when you have appeals, they could go both ways.
I think I would just like, for the sake of clarity for the way it's read, so that it, because is there anything in here that could prevent the opposite from happening? Like if you say, well, it says consistent or inconsistent, I can make the case that, right, like I can still say it's inconsistent, or I can still say it's consistent. So should we maybe not write in language that says a denial of development? They'll have to, prove that it was denied based on being inconsistent.
So
So what I'm saying, like saying who has to prove inconsistency and who has to prove consistency.
Depends on what's being appealed. So
Right, but
So
do you
if
think
it's
that the way it's written
denied,
is,
the developer would need to prove that it was denied inconsistent with whatever the zone, or whatever bylaw or zoning play. But if it is approved at the local level or municipal level, another appellant might be there to prove that it is not consistent.
okay, I was
So
reading
it would
the
be-
consistent or inconsistent,
Yeah.
I was reading as being consistent or inconsistent with your town plan. But in what you're saying, it sounds like would be the decision was inconsistent with the town plan. I'm saying,
Yeah, because it'd be appealing a decision that's already been made.
yes, and here's one of the issues. This is an issue. And I found it I talked to the chair about it. We've gone back and forth in the language. So previously it said the decision. This version says the application. You can go either way. And then the issue of inconsistent and consistent, I also think is an issue. And I do think I need the committee's input on what it is you want it to
I
be.
think we
Yeah.
could, here's what
Yeah.
I think we could do.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, there's one very minor issue. It's not about consistent or inconsistent, which Ellen and I talked about. The problem is, before we use the word decision, and now she's replaced decision with
Application.
application. And the reason is this. If it wasn't de novo review, what the reviewing court normally in a lot of states, remember,
Yeah.
they give a lot of, what they're trying to decide is, did the decision of the body below, the municipal body, did they do it right? So what they're reviewing is the decision of the body below. Here in this state, under de novo review, which is a little strange, I think, but that's my personal view. They sit and start all over again. So they're not,
Reviewing.
whatever the municipality did is not the issue. What the issue is what they're doing, and what they are looking at is the application. So that minor change just reflects our situation. But I do think that this could be cleared up a little, and I'm going to state it. And please, committee, correct me if I don't have it right. that someone appealing a denial of the application must demonstrate that it's consistent with the plans. Someone appealing an approval has to show that it is inconsistent. Ellen, does that make sense to you?
It does.
Can you revise the language just a little?
Yeah.
So just,
So, and I.
we're saying you're gonna hold your de novo hearing in a way that's kind of not that way.
I'm sorry, what?
Above with H,
Yeah.
except in the case.
So
Gotcha. Okay, never mind.
well, right, but it does lead me to wonder if it needs to be moved out of this section.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's not a question, not an exception to the de novo hearing.
yeah.
It's just a standard of proof.
Okay.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I mean, I think, like, this is a good example. We all know what we want.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a straw vote on what we all know we want, and she'll get us the language, and believe me, by the time it gets to you.
Yeah.
For a final vote, it'll be what we want, and if it's not, then we'll make her do it again until.
Until someone else comes in and tells me that. Right. All right. So the next part is on page 20. So this is about the court's docket priority. And so starting on line 14 on page 20, except for cases the court considers of greater importance, appeals of an appropriate municipal panel decision under 24 VSA chapter 117. That's the municipal zoning chapter, so where zoning permits are issued, involving housing development, take precedence on the docket over other cases and shall be assigned for hearing and trial or for argument accordingly.
This has been unchanged from your prior 5.1, right?
Yes.
This is just priority.
Which they say they kind of do already, right?
That's what they said yesterday.
Yeah, Judge Zone testified, they kind of do it, I think that's a good way to put it. He used the technical term employed by one of our members, that they kind of do it that way. And I think we're kind of thinking if they kind of do it, we can say it.
Also, I did learn that they have nearly identical language elsewhere to prioritize open meeting law appeals. And so they do already have a directive, the civil division of the Superior Court, not the environmental division. So that is something that they are.
In other words, remember, we were a little worried about treading on the feet of the judiciary to the point of view of it violating separation of powers. And now we know that it's even less likely that we're doing it, or that we've already treaded on their feet elsewhere. Okay.
And what I heard from yesterday was also that they're already kind of doing it,
Mhm.
but then there was the other specific decision. Oh, we're not on standing. Sorry, never
No,
mind.
we're not.
Oops, never mind.
Not yet. Okay.
Yes. So
Now we are.
now we are talking about we're talking about standing on page 21.
I should start off by saying Ellen and I met this morning for an hour and puzzled our way through this, because we realized that maybe there was a much simpler way of saying what we were doing, and also in terms of how it's structured, and much simpler. And in addition, Ellen went through the statutes to check out whether the definition of interested person, which this is, works throughout the code or throughout the land use parts of the code, and she'll explain it does.
So on page 21, a couple things are happening. Interested person is the person who can appeal a municipal zoning decision. And so you're changing two separate aspects of that. the simpler one to explain first is the subdivision 4, which is the any 20 persons that has already existed. Previously, we discussed in this committee, we're striking that because that is the any 20 persons who may or may not have any direct injury by the project. So section 4 is striking that ability to appeal entirely. Section 3, subdivision 3, a couple different things are happening on line 5. Currently in statute, this is the abutter appeal provision. And so someone in the immediate neighborhood who can demonstrate a physical or environmental impact could appeal. This is getting rid of that provision and just saying a person who can demonstrate a particular injury that is attributable to the decision. They can appeal. So if they are a butter and they meet that, they can appeal. Or if they live farther away in town, but they meet that injury, they can appeal.
In other words, let me add a commentary to this. I think that Elizabeth gave an example the other day that is a really good way to explain. Let's say that a project involves runoff, and that it involves runoff into a stream. And runoff of, parking lot, whatever, into the stream and contaminates the stream. And let's say I just am generally a person interested in good planning and environmental design, and I live in this town, and a project is proposed without what I think is adequate runoff control. My first stop is at the town when it holds hearing. And I, as a citizen, have a right to explain that I think this project needs work, that it doesn't have adequate this and doesn't have adequate that. And no one can say to me, Mark, what's your interest here? My interest is I live in the town. That's it. But if the decision is made and I'm not happy with it, and I want to go to court, I want to appeal it. It doesn't matter whether there's 20 of me, 1 of me, or 10 of me, or 100 of me. It doesn't matter. I cannot appeal. I would not have standing because I think it's an unwise decision. I have to demonstrate that the runoff was on my land or into a creek that has water I drink or that I swim in. And that's just an example. I mean, maybe there's other connections I'm not thinking of, but I'm just trying to use this to illustrate. And so what we realized was that we didn't need a separate section on the butters. I mean, a butter probably has standing, probably, maybe not. I mean, if it's a 100-acre project and they're at one end of it and everything going on is at the other, maybe they don't. But this is the classic standard. Now, we talked about codifying the language of that decision, and all that we did is we went through, Ellen and I went through the decision and looked for good language, simple language, and this language
Thank you.
is there. That's all it is. So that's kind of what this is. And
Great.
what we're saying is, to be completely clear, the administration's proposal was, for example, that now it should be 20% of the whole town. It could be hundreds and hundreds of people. But those people could be just the people who care about it because they
wouldn't actually be affected directly.
They may not be
by their
affected directly. They
properties.
just live in the town and think this is what we consider to be good development. That's not good enough. It just gets rid of worrying about that and gets down to this classic standard that is usually applied, which is, it comes from the Constitution, and it's this case in controversy. The courts are saying we're not legislators, so we're not going to just sort of opine on the wisdom of something. We have to have cases where it comes to us because somebody has a clear actual controversy that involves their specific interest. That's what Ellen's trying to, I think, put together here.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Well, and you were juggling different intents, and so I think this simplifies it.
Yeah.
And by the way, what this also means, just to be really clear, and this isn't in here, but it's just the way the law works. And we didn't change it. Let's say 5 people want to bring a lawsuit, or 10, or 20. They all,
They all
each
have to
one
have
of them has
demonstrated.
to show that they have this, but there's no requirement that there be 20 of them. You're not going to go shopping around signing people up. It just says it applies. However, if AARP, no, that's the wrong one. That's too big. Some local organization that really is a 501c3, it's an organization. I don't know.
Yeah, they have those like in my, like something for the
Somebody-
units, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, let's say it's an incorporated entity.
Mhm.
The incorporated entity has to show a direct, but it could have 20 people in it or whatever, that would be it, but that's called associational. But anyway, that's not changed here. There's just no number involved. We're not playing numbers.
I don't want numbers.
And this, we've also gotten rid of the financial
That's not in here.
discouragement from doing this, so.
That's not in here. We had testimony in here. There is, we were provided an example of, I think it's Massachusetts, but the Massachusetts example also had a safeguard, which I have seen elsewhere, which said that a judge could award attorney's fees to the unsuccessful appellant, to the, attorney's fees against the unsuccessful appellant, but they had to show malice, actual malice. And that's, by the way, every state has something called, you can sue someone for what's called abusive process. In other words, if someone sues,
Being frivolous, yeah.
it's not just frivolous, but malice, real malice, then you can bring a lawsuit. And I've seen those win. I've seen situations, in fact, I didn't participate in one. But that was not in the administration's proposal. There was no safeguard like that. There was no requirement of malice.
I have a quick question about this. So by reading a person, does that mean that like if, a family has put their property into some kind of trust or donated their part of their land to, I don't know, a land trust
If
or
it's,
whatever?
let's say their land's in a testamentary trust.
Yeah. Yeah, do
I
they
think
qualify
they'd
as a
be a
person or do you
person.
have to have all of the individual people that?
So we're in Title 24, Chapter 117. So the definition of person in this chapter is an individual, a corporation, a partnership, an association, or any other incorporated or unincorporated organization or group.
I'll tell you what I think. Lots of people, me, have paid lawyers in order to have a will and trust and been informed by our lawyers that we must transfer our property into
The living
the
will.
living trust.
Yeah.
And if I had standing, I can't imagine that the court would say, oh, well, but your living trust is, I don't think that would be a barrier.
A person.
I'm asking.
Person is broader than natural person.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use a lot of us live on the borders of other states. Does this open it up for other states? People that live in other states to show that? You've taken away any requirement of being in that municipality.
Yes.
Was it there? Oh, it's within.
Both of them require being a landowner or occupying.
So,
So they would still have to demonstrate their particular injury.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the water rights example. or not rights, but water example of,
I think you're onto something.
Mhm.
If it was, the property was on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, in Vermont. And the issue was contamination of the Connecticut River or something.
which New Hampshire owns the lion's share of.
Yeah, a New Hampshire citizen could, if they wanted, appeal the Vermont action if they thought, if they could prove actual injury.
Right. There are many things there. Well, yeah,
That's true.
The requirement to participate in the hearing at
that's
the
already.
local is still in here also. So that applies overall as well.
In other words, they can't sue. That's called exhausting your administrative remedies. That's separate from this. It's still in there. You still cannot sue if you didn't, unless you participated below and raised the issues that you're raising in the lawsuit. You can't just come in late. So the New Hampshire resident would have had to come over and participate in the proceedings and then demonstrate a particular.
Does anyone feel it'd be beneficial to keep some sort of owning or occupying land in the municipality?
You can,
I don't know.
you could, up to you guys. She can put
Well-
in there and that it
Do you
has.
feel like that's over more than what we need to do kind of thing? Or,
If you own property on the town line, you're still, you still can possibly have standing if something that happens on the other side of the line. It might not be all that far away. So if I had which I do, I have property right on a town line. If somebody in Springfield decides to put in an oil refinery or something on the lot across the state or across the town line, which I'm not suspecting them of doing, but I'm not an abutting landowner in that municipality, but I am a abutting landowner.
Well, in
So,
the existing law, okay, not
In
just
the
proposed,
existing
in
law.
the existing law. Any 20 people, any 20 people, no matter without the interest, they had to be in the municipality. Okay?
yes,
But the person owning or occupying property in the neighborhood didn't have to be in. the municipality. So right now, I guess what I'm saying is I think the language that she's got is pretty much the status quo.
okay.
It does open it up a little in the sense that
It doesn't have to be in the municipality, but it
well,
does have to demonstrate.
they did it, well, before it said in the immediate neighborhood there, but I still think it's conceivable, Joe. Very unlikely, but it's conceivable that someone would be able to show immediate impact and not be, like right there, but
I don't know. It's probably fine. It just was.
The constitutional standing language, like, would that not, because wouldn't it have to be within the grounds, or would that not help mitigate the state line issue?
no,
If you were to say, to say, had the constitutional interest, standing interest versus the particularized interest, because I feel like, is that where the click is? Is that, it is in the particularized, or no, I'm misreading that?
constitutional standing is a particular.
It is, but I'm saying, is there a way to clarify the language so that it makes it so that you can't do that with it, so that it's just a state or like language, like it would only pertain to. There's no way to do that.
I mean, I think you could.
I'm not
And
sure.
maybe that's not what you were asking, Joe. That
No,
I think
probably.
we're fine. I think it's just one of those rare possibilities, but
Yeah.
those exist for pretty much anything we do.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other changes?
No, there are no other changes. There's two other sections here that we haven't talked about, since I was last here, section 12 has the, removes the requirement to hold hearings on bylaws if they're required. And then, section 13 is moving up the due date for the study report.
That's page. Oh, yeah, right.
It's on the next page, 22, both of those.
All those are in the brown.
And they're not yellow because they haven't changed since. the last one.
Right, yeah, okay. So. In other words. Those are still the same.
And then additionally, the other two energy related sections have been removed from this draft. They can be put back in if you want them to be, but it sounded like you're not moving forward.
So members of the committee, you remember there were, since it's not there now, remind you. We had two energy. One of the energy provisions. Remember, under current law, there's essentially a sunset or an end to what's called community net metering. There was an exception for 1 year for affordable housing. And we had testimony that they'd like to extend that 5 years because affordable housing projects sometimes don't have room on the project, and so they have to be offsite. Then there was a second provision that had to do with Efficiency Vermont being able to help use its funds to help low-income affordable housing projects without it counting against them in their overall contract that they had to provide everything at least cost. Both of those I feel are desirable. They both would have to go through the Energy Committee. The chair of the Energy Committee inquired and looked at it and concluded that there was just no way in our time frame we could possibly get it done in the few days of next week. And that if she tried, she might not get the outcome that we wanted. And so for the moment, I took them out. Not because I don't like them, but because what can you do? There are at least 3 Senate bills that relate to energy, one of which is out.
Yep.
And 2 of which are maybe coming, depends, right, Ellen?
Yeah.
And, they'll come over to us and they'll be referred to the Energy Committee, and if things change, we could try to get these back in. So it gives us a little more time to talk to the people in the Energy Committee. I'm not happy about this, but I think it's just reality, which doesn't always make me happy.
Sorry.
Okay,
So what I'm hearing you say, just to be clear, although this is called draft 5.1 of the whole bill, what we're about to see from Cameron is a draft 6.1. And that draft 6.1 is the draft that will contain all kinds of new language and additions outside of what you've gone over, plus what you've gone over.
Yes.
So all the changes that she just went through in this draft will appear in the draft we are about to see, and which, Magali, we will about have copies of.
When you-
Don't look.
Let's see from here what you're shopping for.
I did
add something to the cart.
And so I did hear a change in section 9.
Yeah.
So I will need to make that, so that will not be in 6.1,
Right.
that would be in the subsequent draft.
Right, but what I'm gonna assume, I think that after we do 6.1, there may be other things like we just talked about that are minor changes and that have to be. That, the kind of thing we'll work on next week and finish, and then will be available to the committee. Any other questions of Ellen? Ellen, 1,000 thank yous
Thank
for
you.
all of your hard work and the work that is.
Make it 1,001.
Thank you, Ellen.
So nice to see all of you. Happy Friday. Go see on camera. His first year, right?
You mean we didn't go easy on you? Okay,
Good luck transcribing that.
we don't have a camera here. And we have 20 minutes. Yeah. How about we go
Oh, we
over the
can
bill?
go
We
back
just keep
to the
going
list.
through our list of bills.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I just want to stop in really quickly and say thank you so much to the committee for all of your work today. I'm sorry I wasn't there. And the chair knows, but I'm available all next week in case anybody needs anything.
Also,
Oh.
Ashley has, we won't say that she has given me her proxy and the
Straw.
straw, because that, I'm not, straw is very flexible, but having a proxy might be stretching it. Okay, let's put it this way, I know what she thinks.
You know,
will
that's
so
your straw.
And I will articulate it,
All
Ours
right.
Ashley.
Thank
that
you
right?
so much.
Feel free to share.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
so,
back to
ladies
the
and gentlemen,
list.
back to the list. Hold on just a moment.
We are at
For-
H 333.
Yes, but what I want to do is, just a moment here. Just a moment here. If you go to our web, for those who are listening in online, if there are such individuals
We're
on
very
Friday
popular.
afternoon who are listening in online.
We have 3 viewers.
We have
Whoa.
3 viewers.
Are they-
You want to go to our House webpage for House General. And if you look at bills in and out, there's a tab called Bills in and Out of Committee. We are working our way down that list and are now at H 333. So H 333 is an act relating to collective bargaining for agricultural workers. Again, Kate Logan. Does anyone know?
Yeah, I can give the context, and folks who were on the committee last time remember. And Ashley, was appointed to the study committee on this as well. So we worked on, last year, and other folks who are here can chime in too. Worked on a bill about, organizing, and, we ended up having the piece that was for agricultural workers to be put into a study committee. So worked with House Ag, so there was folks appointed from this committee, which was our former vice chair and Ashley, and then the folks from the House Agriculture, Chair Durfee and Representative Supernaut. And so they did vote on that, I believe, the study committee, and it was not favorable, I think. I don't remember. I believe I read it was not
Yep.
favorable to give them that. So this is a bill that a member brought forward to bring that up again. So we had a lot of testimony from the farm labor, the Farm Bureau, from different organizations, migrant justice, various organizations talking about both sides. So this is someone, so anyway, they had a study committee. It didn't come out favorably to do this, but someone else is introducing a bill again to bring it back to the table. So it did take a fair amount of testimony for this.
Without expressing an opinion, I think it's safe to say it would be a lot of work.
It would, and this is it's complicated, especially
Very.
in agriculture.
Correct.
There'd have to be some guardrails around it.
Right.
So whatever it turns into, it won't be as simple as what this is.
no.
Trying to understand why the language actually has crossed out.
Those
What
are
is
groups that
agricultural
don't
work?
have the right to. It's just strike.
Okay, does not include employed as, yeah.
Yeah, so currently folks who are agricultural workers do not, so the concerns, some of them are raised were, you know, no farms, no food, animals were some of the opposition. Sometimes people don't even have, you know, it's a handshake, you know, as an agreement. And then there are folks who are obviously for it, who are serving in that capacity and would like the same rights as all other workers. So yeah, side of us here too.
Yeah, that, and so part of that was because that was, it is a heavy lift, I'll say full disclosure, but I will also say that I do want to take it up next session if we can, even if it's not this one, because although it is a heavy lift, it's an important lift. And this was a lot to do with, getting ag workers included as an employee. And so, and then they weren't even part of the conversation, so they didn't have those rights. And so when you don't, you can't, and so going back to the history, we had a whole history lesson about labor rights and all of these things. And it was fascinating to learn so much and to learn how our labor laws have transformed and manifested themselves and who was included, which were domestic workers and agriculture, and why they were excluded from those rights and the transition of that and how. And so I'm always for bringing that conversation back up. It is a heavy lift and it is a hard thing, but when we're talking about humans, yes, no farms, no food, and no people to work those farms. There's no food either, so, and we should take care of the people who are doing those things.
No, I can see that.
It's complicated.
Needs some
Yeah,
structure.
yeah,
Um,
it's a lot.
But in that environment, you can't not milk
One
the
thing
cows.
I would urge them to think about, for you to think
Yeah.
about, and we can discuss this before we adjourn.
Yeah.
And, well, no, I think we should discuss it at some point just amongst ourselves. My general experience is, and I think this is, for example, true with landlord tenant, is that when you have had a study committee or a long process and it has failed to reach consensus, before we actually take on the issue again during the session, it would be good if a few individuals were to assemble a very small group of stakeholders and see if you can hammer out an agreement. In other words, if it's a community that's so divided that they cannot resolve their interests.
Yeah.
I think when we have a hearing, we would find it difficult for us to resolve those interests, as opposed to making it clear to people, we really want to do this and you better sit down and work it out. So you should think about, is this something you want to work on? Because it's take a couple of people, say during the summer, this is my project.
Mhm.
I'm
happy to take that on if it were to ever come to that, because,
I'll put that in the notes that folks are interested in discussing it in the summer and also reviewing, like I honestly didn't watch every thing on the study committee, but
I watched a few of the sessions.
all right, so I'll put that.
I think it was very eye-opening for
H
everybody.
334 is, I've got it up. It's Casey and Logan, Bustling, Casey, et cetera. This bill proposes to restrict the use of non-compete agreements. And restrict the use, it doesn't kill them, it just restricts them, of the stay or pay provisions that require employees to pay certain costs to an employer when separated. And so this is, again, one of those labor bills that's in answer to an earlier question, is moving certain matters out of the purely private basket into a hybrid basket where the state is limiting what contracts can provide. Any thoughts? I'm neutral.
Yeah, and I'm gonna check in
Same.
on what the
It
Senate's
could be.
doing too.
I've seen non-compete agreements where they don't belong,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and I've seen them where they do belong.
Yeah,
And in a labor market where there are jobs available, it may not be such a big, labor has a little bit of an advantage. They don't like one contractor to work for somebody else, but in a constricted labor market where jobs are hard to come by, they might sign on to something that would not do otherwise. So I don't know. It's I'm interested enough to think about it to some degree.
Okay,
Or I don't know that whether I feel strongly about it, or it really depends on what it looks like.
um. 336. Enhancing. An act enhancing to enforcement of employment laws. I don't know what this does. Is anybody familiar with this?
Just the purpose on it lends me to know, but. Just to enhance enforcement of employment laws by permitting employees, representative organization, whistleblowers to bring civil actions on behalf of the Commissioner of Labor.
I see. This is probably. Yeah, in other words, this is one where. It's,
They're
I
trying to
guess, a
make sure that the
dissatisfaction
employee-
with the labor department. They're feeling like. What's
Pretty
going on?
much.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's because of maybe the practice of misclassifying a person. If you read into the language of the term aggrieved employee, like they're adding a definition of an aggrieved employee.
Relief is needed.
Okay, so what we
Individual
don't
business
know is. I'm hearing a question mark, because we just don't know the area.
Yeah, and I think again, when we come back, like I'm gonna make a list of all the notes, like we can have Sophie come in and kind of like run through some bullet points on each thing to clarify, but we'll still have there are some ones that we're like passionate about, but she can probably, that would be good to have like a little labor rundown on some of it, maybe. Sure.
Yeah, anything that relates to the bills.
I think that's one where we just don't know enough. Yeah.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, for me, same with 337. An act relating to the duties of the Commissioner of Labor pertains to. It requires the Commissioner of Labor to make public enforcement actions taken against employers in violations of wage and hour prevailing rates and child labor laws.
Is 347 now on?
Yeah, I don't know, 337, I kind of. I don't know enough.
I think, yeah, again, it's.
Does anybody have strong opinions or know now what's going on?
No, I don't know anything about. These three, I'm guessing, are all the same person if I were to look at them.
Yeah, there's a group of bills from the same person and some of them are very niche, and so we have to kind of know that.
Yeah.
They're very specific.
Yeah.
Situation. There's all in a row of stuff.
I see that now.
344.
Bye.
Have a good break. Thank you so much.
Don't miss us too much.
That was quick.
She's full of it this week.
Okay. 344 is a major bill. 344 bill that is basically basically proposed that as a general matter, discharge of an employee has to be for good cause. It can't be at will. So that's a major change in American labor law. And I assume would be a bill that would take a lot of work
That would be a
We
transformational,
get a massive no. from you.
a massive no from JP.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, that's.
It's kind of a non-starter, if you will.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see how we could possibly do this. And that's 3 or 4 days for me, so.
No.
$347. I think, yeah, an act relating to expanding coverage. Wait a minute here. Go back to 347 is an act. Looking on the webpage. An act relating to expanding coverages of minimum wage and overtime laws and maintaining the authority of the Attorney General to enforce complaints of employee misclassification.
I guess that's a pretty big one too. I guess, let's see.
Bill proposes to eliminate, oh, that's interesting. Proposes to, it's doing a lot of things, to increase minimum wage to 20. To repeal the exemption of agricultural workers. From the applicability of the minimum wage law. So there would be $20 for them.
Eliminate tip.
To phase in overtime pay for agricultural workers.
Yeah, it's okay.
Eliminate the tip minimum wage. And propose to set a minimum salary that an employee must earn to qualify as an executive for purposes of being exempt. And it removes the authority of the Commissioner of Labor to recommend minimum wage for individuals with disabilities. Okay, so it does a lot. I mean, it's got a lot of stuff in it. I guess I'm curious what people think, but I think same thing that we discussed earlier, but even more.
Yeah, this one's Babe Ruth pointing a bat.
But the next one's a big one too, Joe, you ready?
All right, let's see it.
Flip over the page.
The extreme temperatures?
Oh, sorry, the one after that.
You're like, that's not so bad.
Ready?
348. 348 is extreme temperatures.
Yeah.
Two
Yeah. And
mild lift.
I think what we're hearing, some of the labor laws bills are just too heavy a lift for this, to make before crossovers. Some of them, we just can't opine because we don't know enough and we gotta get, we gotta get counsel in
We do,
here.
and I might, over the break, after I type up these notes, I might put together like some that are kind of
You can group.
similar
Yeah,
from my
that would be
labor
great.
knowledge and kind of see, because we don't want to have to repeat. We've decided to do some stuff, and then I'm also gonna check in with the senators and see what there is in their bill and get back to everyone too.
Yeah, the good thing is, at least we're going through them. When
No,
it gets
this
the
is
Senate
great.
bill,
You
we'll
really,
know what is in the ether.
yes,
Oh,
Okay, 362, we still have time here, so we'll keep going. 362 is, it's a bill by Troy that essentially puts this committee into the middle of the conflict over the ODNOC versus the tribe, the Vermont tribe, Abenaki. And comments?
I think the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is probably maybe looking into this. I don't know.
They-
But it's certainly work
They
that,
have at length.
Yep.
This bill makes changes in their makeup, deals with
To the commission.
concerns over conflict of interest and et cetera. It's very much aimed at a different process rather than the one that we've had.
Even though the commission has already been operational for 18
Right.
months.
That's correct.
but it doesn't allow us to make the final call.
I don't believe, no, it calls for what it calls a more neutral investigation.
It's a tough one. I mean, it's one that's emotionally charged.
It would definitely take a lot more
Yeah,
time for
Probably the rest
testimony.
of the
than-
session.
Yeah.
it may be a next session thing, but I think because the people involved are so invested in it, that it, to them, it's not a minor question.
Right. I wasn't here. I don't know. Mary were you here when they went over the?
I wasn't on this committee, but
Okay,
I
but
was,
you were in the
I was
building.
involved in
Yeah,
that.
and you were, when we had. I wasn't here for when it was discussed in this committee the last time, but I worked in the building and it was very intense and I agree, like. It is incredibly important to a lot of people.
I think we should leave the Truth and honestly, I think we should leave the Truth and Reconciliation Commission out of it and let them do their work. And if they want to,
Let's keep us out of it, let them.
let the TRC do its work. And if they want to have a discussion of the problem that they're actually getting at, have that discussion, but leave the TRC out of it because it's really not this. It's a tangential issue, it's a related issue, but when solving the root issue is more important to the people involved than doing the work of the TRC.
Yeah.
So at the very, this is
Not
another
this
one of
session.
these ones that we can't do right now.
Yeah.
The bill does, I mean, the bill is clearly aimed at changing the status quo. Because it says the recognition process shall require genealogical evidence verified by independent experts and based upon input from federally or internationally recognized indigenous communities. In other words, if you're not federally recognized, it wouldn't be based on input from you.
Yeah, I'm not.
So
And
I
you-
would say
and you
that
need
that
blood
bill,
proof.
which was, I mean, I think that would be a major lift because it would involve kind of revisiting the entire.
It's like 5 different debates.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the question of the tribes. It's also a question of whether we really do we want to go there with blood proof? I mean,
School break.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
want
I
anything
would
to do
say
with
that
that.
that's probably for now, a no. Three
But
seventy-four,
recognizing that there are committee members who want to. Anyway, we'll put it on.
no, but I just meant,
Discuss it further at some,
I just meant like
Yes.
in the next 4 days, no.
because it doesn't mean we're gonna do everything they recommend.
And. I think this is my bill.
374,
So that is, I do know that that is going to be in the, so real quick, if anyone's curious. I am passionate about it, but, I was inspired by some work that they were doing in Illinois for people with disabilities not getting a sub-minimum wage. I think it's important that everyone who,
What's a sub minimum wage?
People with disabilities only have to be paid. Do you know how much, Sue?
It can be pennies,
Yeah.
Pennies on the dollar.
Vermont Developmental Disabilities Council, there's a federal labor law that allows people with disabilities to be paid below the minimum wage, whatever the minimum wage happens to be, they can be paid below it.
yeah, and I personally find that disgusting, for lack of a better word. So, but Allison, Senator, your people, Joe and Becca have a bill and that will be coming over, so we don't have to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, I personally think it's atrocious that people with disabilities, but there are other arguments from, I have heard as well.
There, I don't know if there's adequate guardrails to it, to give somebody that this allows for somebody to hire an individual that may work at half the pace. You know, that you have to make, it makes it possible for a small business anyways to afford to give this individual
It's an incentive.
job. I mean, there is, but I don't know that there's adequate, you know, what's the bottom end of that? I don't know that there is, I think a sub-minimum wage.
Like it's too broad.
To recommend a specific sub-minimum wage might be pretty helpful.
It's,
Because otherwise, a lot of these folks are just not going to get employed. We also need to be
No, yeah, no,
very
I,
But we
specific
also-
about who falls in this category, who does
Yeah,
not.
right.
and I understand what you're saying, but we also, this whole system is so punitive. You are forced by law to remain in poverty, like sub-poverty level, assets. You can't have a retirement, like if you suddenly become disabled, you have to give up your retirement, you have to give up all of your assets in order to be able to receive any sort of support. And yet you're also not allowed to get a regular living wage. And also we're sitting here at a table where we could be providing housing and we really don't. So how, like, with the looming cuts to all of that stuff coming down the road, how exactly are we? How exactly do we justify our actual stance on all of these ways that we block somebody from being able to, not even, God forbid, we should consider helping someone live a prosperous life, but survive. I mean, if you got into an accident on your way home, what?
We can do it before crossover.
I'd say these are the policy issues.
we don't have to do it now
Okay.
though, because it is coming
It's
over
coming.
to us, so we
That-
anticipated then.
And I think what we're gonna
This is
do, and
germane.
what I hear a certain member here committing to, is using our time next week to create categories of bills. This is one of the ones that falls in the Senate category.
Yeah,
That individual is listed as one of the, no, it's not you, it's you. That's 399, which is next.
you're
That
is-
one's, I don't think that one's me.
lieutenant, oh, there's two, there's
Yeah,
one
that
that's
one's not me.
Chloe Tomlinson from Winooski also has a, landlord tenant,
Oh,
Yeah.
there's two landlord tenant
Yeah.
bills, 399 and
440.
440.
yeah. Right. Hello.
So 399 is an act relating to tenant rights. And it's an omnibus bill
Yeah,
about
that's
tenant, landlord tenant.
And I think that one, will that, do you think, come over?
No,
No,
this
this
is
is-
Chloe's.
So what I'm saying is, I
Oh.
know that
399,
there's
yeah,
something
that's
similar in
clear.
the Senate from Senator Bohowski. I don't know if it's gonna get out and over to here.
But 399
so.
is, yeah, that's Tomlinson, Cole, Sheena, Hedrick, Lamont.
It is my
Yeah.
understanding from conversations that I believe the Senate was waiting for the House to do a bill on this matter and will not be sending us a landlord tenant bill. Is my understanding, but I will check in.
Do you want to say anything in terms of whether?
This one, well, I mean, this is an omnibus, so this has a lot of other parts in it. So this is obviously not like, I feel like a non-starter for the next guy. This is like a huge bill. This is like our committee, this is equivalent to our committee
Right.
bill. So like, that's a bit
Very
much.
long.
One page.
Like, this is an omnibus bill. The subject matter, yes, but this is a big bill and we vote on. and
Okay.
pass the-
I'm very interested in the subject matter.
Yes.
I would like us, I think this is a summer's work. Trying to get, we've already had, as you know, only too well, aid, and Joe as well. We've already had a committee that has spent a lot of time on this, and I think the next step is to get a very few stakeholders
Yeah,
to work together and see whether there's common ground or not.
I think that sounds good. But yeah,
Um,
that bill's gigantic.
402. Is, 402 is an act relating to Vermont Municipal Labor Relations Act. And that's another bill, that's Gina's bill. And I don't know what it's about. Bill proposes to allow municipal supervisory employees to organize and collectively bargain.
Yeah, I don't know much of the
And
backstory
this
on
is,
that one.
I would really need more of a tutorial on this. I don't know if it's controversial or not.
Nothing about.
I was gonna say anything labor is controversial. All right, so more information from Sophie for that one.
403, this is fair labor standards and housing standards for agricultural workers. So it fits into the, I assume, the same category as the other bill.
Yes, living wage laws and overtime pay. For housing.
Just wondering if it's narrower.
Well, for starters, it's suggesting 12.55 an hour and not 20.
This is Heather bill. And it's a very different bill.
And yeah, she was on the committee. For information.
Yeah, it says minimum wage. It's kind of an alternative, really.
Yeah, likely, like with some of the housing tenant bills, some folks probably took recommendations or knowledge from the committees they served on in the summer and made bills, which is what the purpose was. So she probably likely proposed what she had learned from the study committee.
There's a survey in there.
429 is an act relating to the jurisdiction of the Human Rights Commission. That's what you talked about, Elizabeth, right?
Yeah. Also, my question is going back to the H38, which is the new positions of the.
Yeah.
Are we not going to, consider making those statutory positions?
I don't know. I just don't know.
Because if we just put them in the budget, then they're session positions.
If we put them in the budget, then the question is, are they base or are they one time? But I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question of whether a position has to be a statutory position. I just don't know. I ought to, but I don't.
Doesn't
It has to
require
be-
base funding?
Well, it doesn't. I mean,
In order to get base funding, it has to be statutory.
does it?
Yeah.
Well, and then I guess that is why
That's
yes, you're right, because that's what we're doing with DEHA.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to make sure that we need those positions. And I am concerned that if they're not funded, what would
Well,
happen?
I think, yeah.
I mean,
there
obviously,
is no bill, to my knowledge.
There is, it's right, it's
Except
page 38.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does that. So I was wrong earlier when I suggested that it's really up to approach. It's not, I guess. If they're going to be made statutory,
We would have to.
we would have to do it.
Yeah,
I'd like to take time to make sure that we
Can,
figure that out.
can the statutory decision be made
That's H38 is the
Yeah.
statutory
It
decision.
would have to be a
Right,
bill.
but is that made
I
in
think another
isolation from the
question-
funding? Like, I get that you can't just
Yeah,
ask
I
for
don't
the
know.
funding.
I don't
if you're
know
trying to
whether-
fix it.
Probes could just put it in the budget.
Well, my concern is that, I mean,
And it's still.
we know that the Human Rights Commission is far, far behind. And we know that they're asking for 6 positions. That's how far behind they are. And what is the reality? I mean, truly, of those. If we decided on 6 positions, of those 6 positions being granted every year,
Right.
if they're not statutory.
Let's put it there. I don't know the answer to whether non-statutory provisions are put in place. I just don't know.
They're not. That is the answer.
They're not.
Yeah.
But I know the reverse happens. That is, we could approve the bill for 6 positions and they just not get funded by the probes.
Right.
Okay.
But at least it would be if the committee chose to, our understanding, because we're a policy committee, that that is needed. So we could at least, if we chose to support, whether it's 6 or
Yeah,
whatever it
whatever,
is,
we
that
can do
we chose the need and that it's clearly needed. And then that could be a decision that they make, but we at least can know that under the policy jurisdiction, we felt it was needed. And I do think that is important.
Did Cameron leave?
Left in us.
His stuff is still here, so it's coming back.
And an open question is whether or not, or do we want to, yeah, let's take a break.
But Elizabeth Leatherbill, as someone who was here last time with many of you, I do think that is a problem. That we don't have that covered in our, there is no place for statewide, if there's an issue with a statewide office holder for someone, that is a.
Would that be, you think we could combine that with,
Well, it's germane.
yeah,
You combine it with the other HRC. I mean, it is a tiny little detail, but if you look at the bill, it's 1 sentence long.
right,
And it's not something that, it's not opening up a huge wide expanse for the Human Rights Commission. It is hopefully something that will never be.
Cameron, we're about to take a 5-minute break.
Right, and it also has all parties.
How are you?
And just there's no place to
Okay.
do it.
All right,
Settle in.
the study committee 437 is in our committee bill. And then we're gonna finish the rest
This bill.
later.